This episode of Nuff Said is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
Recording has started.
Hello and welcome once again to Superconnectivity. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is the blue-eyed bomber from the Burger Pits,
Phil, me, and Perich.
and today, only very special guest star, Daniel Kibblesmith. Yay!
Yeah.
I don't have a nickname to give myself. I didn't prepare. I didn't prepare like a wrestling style entry middle name.
That's okay.
Write in, people. Give him one.
Yes. So welcome, Daniel Kibblesmith. Right now, the amazing author of Loki, also a staff writer on the late show with Stephen Colbert,
Correct.
and also the author of Princess Dinosaur and Santa's Husband.
That's right. Yeah, those are our picture books as well. So people who like the comics might like those too. Illustrated by my good friend Ashley Quatch, who has also done some very cool comics.
Very cool. I will be honest. The only of those works that I have read, but I have loved, is Loki.
Well, thanks very much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, that's my first Marvel ongoing. I'm completely obsessed with it right now. Anything that happens to me, anything I get excited about, I said, okay, like 7 paperbacks from now, that could be a Loki story. So, yeah, I'm elbow deep in Asgard.
Well, I mean, that is great. There's so many interesting things, especially with a lot of the things going on in Marvel right now. The whole House of Ideas premise and the universe of ideas that is created, and the stories that each hero creates, and Loki now becoming the hero of his own story. It's pretty amazing. Though, and spoilers if you haven't read it yet, there is what I think one of the most disturbing aspects of this, because for those who don't know, our antagonist in our first real arc is, of course, Nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, he's the bad guy.
He is just horrifying.
He's a bad guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a bad guy, and this is a power I don't think we've ever really seen him use before, but he makes someone's nightmare their reality.
Yes. Yeah, that was something that I think we came up with for this arc, because when you're writing characters who are essentially gods or demons or people who kind of operate as sort of more magical entities, sometimes it can be difficult to have stakes in your story because it feels like sort of anybody can do anything if it's convenient. So one of the things I wanted to do was give Nightmare this very defined superpower. When he's on the terrestrial plane, he is able to make people's nightmares come true effectively. Like, he can alter reality as long as it's anchored in somebody's worst nightmare. And that's what our first Loki story is about, is what is Loki's worst nightmare, and what happens when Nightmare finally grabs him and makes it happen.
And along those lines, first off, I do want to know, and I do apologize, I'm forgetting the names of the characters, but the woman who we see in essentially our side quest, who, spoilers again, does not have the nightmare undone. It's not fixed by the end. Are we going to see her?
No, not strictly, no. Sorry, your question was, are we going to see her again?
Are we going to see her again? Are we going to see what happens with their story?
So I think if you read, so our first story is 4 issues, and then the upcoming number 5 is going to be kind of a palate cleanser, because the other thing that's going on with Loki right now is that he made a bargain with the House of Ideas with these new characters who claim to be the children of eternity. I'll find out if that's actually true at some point, I imagine. And they have given Loki this new status quo where he's also sort of time is affecting him differently. His past is sort of being expanded like an accordion while he's in the present. He's getting all of these new stories. So Loki can sort of, not necessarily by choice, skip around in time now. So the fact that that's happening simultaneously means that every once in a while we get to do these flashback stories, and our number 5 is going to be an Old West team up with Wolverine. But the first 4 are our first arc, and that ends with this poor woman, this lady Megan, who gets used by Nightmare and kind of caught in their godly crossfire. Her problem doesn't get magically fixed. Loki does, these are all spoilers, obviously. Loki does accidentally offer a heroic solution, but it's not like somebody waves a magic wand and everything goes back to normal. Nightmare did real damage in our world, and I think that's interesting and important, and from a writing perspective, fun to have your villain actually do damage to humans. And that was another thing that was important to me about doing this story, this side quest, as you called it, is that it's not an end of the world stakes, it's emotional stakes. So what I'm hoping is that it's a little story about how if gods were real, they could really ruin your life anytime for no reason. And when you read mythology, that's like what most of it is a god shows up and it just jacks your life, kind of just because they feel like it. So yeah, our first Loki arc has a subplot that is essentially that.
So would you say that's like the overarching theme of the series? It's just like Loki, his road to redemption, but also just coming to realize that, I probably have hurt a lot of people with magic over the years and all these other magic users,
Yeah, I think definitely. I think one of the themes that we're doing, and one of the themes that is really sort of intuitive to Loki, is actions have consequences. So usually they're consequences that he plans. Sometimes there are consequences that he does not plan, and sometimes he doesn't know himself, or he's lying to the reader. I don't think, if things go well, I don't think he always reveals whether or not he planned for them to go well. I think sometimes he just takes credit.
And if there's room for like another mini series or something, I would love like a Loki Tony Stark road trip.
Oh God, that's a great idea. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. We decided really early on that because it was a new series, I'm a big Marvel nerd, obviously. So in my mind, it was like, oh, this is a new series, so issue 2 has to be like a famous guest star on the cover. I think about like, Amazing Spider-Man #1 is the iconic web swinging cover. But then, when Spider-Man gets his own series, he's hanging out with Fantastic Four immediately because it's like wrestling. Like they have to put this new guy over. So we decided really early, like, it'd be really great is if we just embrace that tradition. And issue 2 is immediately the most successful character from the MCU. Right on the cover of our new Loki book. But it made a lot of sense from a storytelling perspective because Thor is in our first issue, and Iron Man is, a founding Avenger as well, and has so much baggage with Loki. So we thought, as we kind of mapped out what the first arc was going to be, we thought Thor obviously would be a part of it, and Iron Man, if you were doing more stuff on Earth, which is ultimately what I like about this new Loki series, is that it's Loki kind of hanging out in the Marvel universe. Iron Man would be the most logical person for him to go bother if he's like, so hey, how do I do this hero stuff? Put me on the Avengers, I'm ready.
Snow, I believe it's pronounced Frusty, correct?
I say Frosty, but I have never corrected anyone on any of these pronunciations because I think it's written down, so I leave it open to the reader.
Well, I don't know how to pronounce umlaut, so I could be completely wrong. Yes, I can even pronounce umlaut.
I say Frosty, and I say Durf for the little guy.
Frosty. Okay, well we will keep with that tradition because you are the writer and you're the boss of that.
Sure.
So I have to ask on Frosty, is he going to be turning evil? And maybe that's too much of a spoiler, but let's just say this. Okay, so let's get back because that's too much of a spoiler to give. You don't want to say
sure.
Power corrupts.
Yeah, but Frosty seems like this character. He seems to have this. In the little we've seen, he's had a really interesting evolution. He's so kind of darkly pragmatic and
He's like ruthless. He's like he's like
exactly.
he's like not everything's very. So for people who don't know, Loki didn't really want to do king stuff in Jotunheim. He got bored. He thought the frost giants were kind of simple, and he didn't care about their problems, or at least he didn't find their problems to be entertaining and compelling. So while he screws around on Midgard, he made a giant snowman who is essentially it's Frosti, the right branch of Jotunheim.
Yes.
And he enchanted Frosti with the Norn stones in order to give him life and give him the sort of the power that he would need to rule over these giants. But the problem with that is that Frosti has a huge amount of power, and now he's starting to kind of act like it. Yeah. So yeah, to answer your question without spoiling, I agree with what Phil said, that absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Although at the same time, I do got to say I haven't seen him be a bad king yet.
That's the thing, though. I mean, it really comes down to what makes a good king, and that's what a lot of all the Loki and Thor stories have been about. Is that Thor has a heart of a serpent, but he doesn't necessarily have the cruel, calculating, the icy. I guess that's a pun. The icy temperament of somebody who needs to make hard decisions. We see Black Panther struggle with being, for lack of a Marvel analogy, Black Panther has to be Superman and Batman. Mm-hmm. He has to be Superman to his people, and Batman when he's making the hard decisions about like Secret Wars incursions happening. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I think that Thor is so purely angelic in some ways that I think that Loki genuinely thinks he'd be a better king at Asgard, because I'm sure he thinks he's smarter, and I'm sure he thinks that he's able to make tougher decisions. And what he's ended up creating to serve in Jotunheim in his stead is really like a heartless king, like somebody who's like purely pragmatic. But and then you get to see little conversations with Loki's other sidekick, another supporting character we introduced, Durf, who is a very sweet, very small frost giant, and he gets to be the sort of the voice of of morality, revealing that things are more complicated than mathematical decisions about who has the most food when. Like sometimes you have to consider people's feelings. So yeah, I think that's my way of kind of talking about the responsibilities that Loki has, how they can be done correctly and how Loki is not doing them at all.
So you've clearly been given some free reign with Loki, to tell his story, to rewrite his story. Do you have any fan theories that you've had for a long time that this is the secret origin of Loki that is my headcanon, but I've never revealed, and now I'm going to reveal it? Or are you just working with the, because not for nothing, and Phil knows this,
Are you hinting around at something, Charlie? I know where
obviously I have mine. I'm not going to spoil it unless he's interested, but...
who Loki's mother is, perhaps?
Yes.
Oh, sure. No, I'll confess that I had not given a lot of thoughts to Loki's parentage. I was such a big fan of all of the Loki as protagonist comics that had been made thus far. Obviously the Journey into Mystery stories, largely written, I think all written by Kieran Gillen, with various artists, and Al Ewing and Lee Garbett's Agent of Asgard series is just so spectacular. And then all of the great Thor and Loki comics that came before those. The Vote Loki miniseries by Chris Hastings, so good. And I think that was enough past for me, at least for this arc. Loki has such a rich legacy, and so much character work has gone into Loki's creation and reinvention that I didn't have anything on my list that took place. And nothing that altered his continuity dramatically. I wanted to change his status quo going out. I wanted to have him make this kind of deal with the devil. It gave us like a new a new superpower to play with and kind of an excuse to put him in different settings. Because, Loki's also 1,000 years old, so you can do all these flashback stories. There's no reason Loki couldn't be in the Old West if he didn't, want to be. He hangs out with Squirrel Girl now. So I can see him I'm going to go hang out with Wolverine on the Canadian border, in 1911 or whatever. So all of our Loki stories, even the ones that take place in the past, are kind of strictly with one eye on his new status quo and what's happening here on out. There's definitely stuff in his past that I would love to play with. I love the crazy time travel story where he tells his baby self to act sad when Lofe is killed, so that Odin will adopt him. We've read a lot of stories that kind of rejigger his past, and he's always like the perpetual manipulator. He goes to talk to young Thor and sets things up so he can make the truth sword, or young Odin. There's everything's on the table with Loki, I guess, is what I'm circling. Everything is an option because he's a mythic character with a lot of, we're literally rewriting his story. Our comic is about the books of Loki and how they're about to get more pages in them. So I don't have any headcanon about his past that I was going to reveal that would change the character dramatically in that sort of traditional comic book continuity way. I just wanted to have him have more adventures that take place in the past.
Okay, well that's fine too.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it's going to be good.
Well, like I said, we're very excited about it. We really are enjoying this book greatly. And like I said, what you put on the table is just really fascinating. Now, when you decided to make Nightmare the antagonist of the book, I'm just curious because it just strikes me, maybe it's just the books I read, that it seems like Marvel's having a lot of its mystical heavy hitters show up a lot. I mean, Mephisto, he was in the Champions. He just showed up in Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And he seems to have been making his rounds a lot lately. I'm just wondering if I wonder when stuff like that happens, if you get a word from Marvel saying, oh, by the way, if anyone is interested, use our mystical bad guys right now because we're kind of going to be looking in that direction.
Something big's coming. Use Nightmare.
Yeah.
Sure. Not in my case. I have to imagine that probably happens, and I bet it, if I had to guess just as a writer, I think it kind of comes from both sides because, Winter Soldier isn't a thing until he's a thing. You know what I mean? That was purely created on the comics side. There was no sort of we're going to have a Captain America 2 down the road, so let's make Winter Soldier into this incredibly compelling character. So I think I'm sure it works from both directions, but I'm totally, on the comic book side, I'm totally disconnected from any of the movie stuff. So I've never gotten any memo that says hey, Nightmare is going to be the bad guy in Doctor Strange 2, or Mephisto is going to be the overarching heavy for the next Avengers phase or anything like that. I wish I did, because that'd be cool to know that stuff. But we picked Nightmare. We actually picked Nightmare because Mephisto had been popping up so many places. I originally thought we'll use Mephisto. That's that's one of Loki's biggest villains, slash friends. And I talked to our editors. I talked to Will Moss and Sarah Brunstad, and because Mephisto had been popping up so much, and because we also knew that we really wanted Loki to kick the bad guy's ass in the first arc, we were like, this is Loki as a superhero, so he's really got to kick the bad guy's ass. And we agreed that Mephisto is kind of too powerful a character to tell the story that we ended up telling with Nightmare. And I think if you read our whole first arc, Nightmare does not always have especially high status. There are things that happen to Nightmare in our story where he would be out of character for those things to happen to Mephisto. Mm-hmm. So we just needed somebody who was a little less of a Thanos, a little less of a universe beater. Somebody who would be a really good match for Loki without being so powerful that our story would not have stakes anymore because you were essentially fighting the devil.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would love to incorporate Mephisto soon, but I think the lesson that we all learned trying the first time was that he's a overarching threat. He's a looming, constant threat, like a force of nature.
And does Nightmare work better with like some of these more morally ambiguous characters like Loki, and there's even like a Deadpool annual not too long ago, because it's like you really can't like corrupt Steve Rogers or something, but if you throw Loki or a Deadpool, there's like, oh, what's gonna it's gonna happen.
Yeah,
here.
Shout outs to that Nightmare annual, that Deadpool Nightmare annual. That's by my friend Dana Schwartz.
Oh, that was so good.
It's great. It's really, really great. It's her first Marvel book, but I'm a really big fan of her writing, and I love that they're finding these creators from places like books and novels and internet writing and stuff. Because that's how I got started. I was a fan of Marvel Comics my entire life. But it took a really long time to break into comics, and I think part of the way that I got discovered was just putting a lot of work on the internet, and I think you're getting really cool takes on characters who have been thought about, picked over in the brains of all these people for a really long time who have been outside of Marvel until recently. But as for Nightmare, I mean, I think like any character, it depends on the story. Like that's the other great thing about the Marvel universe is just you can bounce anybody off anybody. It's like I was saying about Loki hanging out with Squirrel Girl. Like that's part of the appeal of the character for me. Is I always think of him as the Marvel universe is like he's like a bad roommate or an ex-boyfriend. He's just like around. So if you're doing a Thanos story, Loki can show up and kind of screw everybody over. But if you're doing a Ms. Marvel story, Loki can show up and screw everybody over. Whatever tier of the Marvel universe you're working on, it would not be inconceivable. I would love to do something with Loki and Moon Knight, because Moon Knight talks to gods. And it would not be out of character for Loki to be there. Whereas, for Daredevil to hang out with Thanos, you'd have to think of like a pretty good reason. Mm-hmm. But for Daredevil to hang out with Loki, I think the reason is just like, hey, it's me, Loki. I'm around.
So I have to, because you say you are a big Marvel fan from way back, and the question that always comes up whenever we talk to a writer is like, and I wonder if maybe you got your choice at first out of the bat, which is like, what's the Marvel character that you most wanted to write? Did you just luck into getting the one you wanted right off the bat, or is there actually no man? I've got this Spider-Man story you're not going to believe.
You probably have like a list of like 20 characters you want to work on, right?
I think like most people, yes, I literally have a list. It is a physical list that exists in the world. It is written on paper. I didn't know there was going to be a Loki series, so I love the character. And I think like a lot of people, I loved him even more after he became a fixture of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As soon as I saw the first Thor movie, I was blown away by the fact that it was, basically Loki as co-protagonist, like really, really interesting. And I loved the character as a sort of recurring cosmic-ish villain in all of the Marvel comics I read growing up. So yeah, Loki wasn't on my list, but not because I don't love Loki, because it didn't occur to me that there would be a Loki ongoing. The answer I always give is Nightcrawler. I would love to do a Nightcrawler, maybe like a mini series or something like that. I think they just had one pretty recently, so I'm not getting my hopes up. But I love Nightcrawler. I think like Loki, Nightcrawler is very versatile, and he's had a lot of incarnations. Mm-hmm. And I would love to do a solo book with that character. I love everything that's happening in the X-Men universe right now. The entire tidal wave of incredible X-Men comics that is upon us. And I think Nightcrawler just continues to be incredibly compelling in them. Definitely my first and favorite Marvel character, always.
Well, there you go.
And I think does it help with a Loki series? Like with if you were writing another character and you brought in like guest stars, it would be like, oh, they're trying to do this, they're trying to do that. But it's like I think Loki probably more than anyone probably works best bouncing off other well-known Marvel characters, especially since he's been around since Avengers 1, like some of those first Thor stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's what I like. At least as a writer, that's what I like doing because he's very sassy.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I like to have him. I like to have him in dialogue. I like to have him in dialogue with characters that are familiar to the audience because part of the fun of Marvel Comics, especially, has always been what if blank met blank.
Oh yeah.
What if blank fought blank. And if the audience knows how, like last year I got to write Black Panther versus Deadpool.
Oh yeah, another good one.
Which was a joy because everybody knows who those guys are, and they know exactly what happens if you put them in a room together. So I knew what was going to happen if you put them in a room together. I know what their personalities are like and how they will clash. So. Yeah, for me, I want to keep doing. I want to keep doing Loki stories that are informed by the Marvel universe, as much or more than just Asgard, because I know how Loki will react to meeting Iron Man when it happens, or Loki pretending to be a hero going to visit Iron Man. I know how that plays out, and I think that when you're writing characters that people already have emotional relationships with, what you want to do is satisfy that that headcanon, like we were talking about earlier. You want to satisfy that headcanon, but in a surprising and interesting way. So I think getting to be like you doing like a, I don't want to give away an idea that I might actually do. Doing a team up with Loki and another character in another setting, like the Western that we're doing. For me, it's as simple as what if Loki hung out with young Wolverine in the Old West? I think we all have something of an idea of how that would go because we know their personalities. Let's do it. Let's watch it unfold.
And I know you don't want to give too much away, but is there any chance of Loki's going to be sassing back and forth with other sassy characters, maybe like say a Deadpool, like we said, or Spider-Man, or?
That would be tremendously fun. It's a little different from a writing perspective, especially a comedy writing perspective, because it's so convenient to have kind of a serious person. In Black Panther versus Deadpool, we obviously had sort of a traditional straight man punchline delivery guy dynamic. Yeah, I mean, and if you read issue 2 of Loki, Iron Man's pretty sassy at him. We definitely have an Iron Man that's informed by Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as much as the comic books. Yeah, I would love to do a Loki Spider-Man story. I think Loki meeting, not meeting, but hanging out with Deadpool would be a very logical choice because Deadpool is also an agent of chaos, and Loki now ostensibly has a bunch of responsibility. So I think that would reveal new things about Loki's character. Yeah, I think there's kind of no bad combination is what we're learning. Putting Loki on like the crazy Infinity Warps team with Emma Frost and Kang, like he's a really good ever shifting jigsaw puzzle piece. That if you're doing an ensemble story and you're not sure who you need, consider Loki. He reinvents himself for the situation. That's his whole deal.
Oh yeah, there was that Doctor Strange storyline where he was Sorcerer Supreme for like a couple months there.
Yeah, it's great. It's really, really good, and you get why he would do that. Oh, it does not seem out of character.
He just goes with everything. He's like French fries.
Yeah. Yeah, the French fries of the Marvel Universe. And like French fries, he might kill you.
Yes.
Oh, you want to play him off as straight man? What about Doctor Doom?
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of my favorite comic book stories of all time, full stop, is the 2 issues of Agents of Asgard where it's during the Axis inversion where, the hate wave is changing the planet. And Loki goes to Latveria and Doctor Doom traps him in a box. And it's great. It's like watching a play. It's a really incredible couple of issues.
So I don't want to bring the room down too much, but it's like right. Well, no, we're right.
No, the Challenger. Let's talk about it.
Okay, yeah, no, not that. But like just writing for like I'm sure topical stuff for Stephen Colbert and stuff. It's just like, do you ever get inspiration from like real, especially these days, real world events for like comics or books or anything?
That's a really interesting question. The short answer, I think, is that everything that I read in the news informs my emotional state. I don't know if I've ever done like a kind of a Law and Order torn from the headlines thing where like over the years we've had I'll keep this apolitical. We've had some presidents. And some of those presidents have informed things that happen in the Marvel universe. You'll notice that there are sort of, and not just the Marvel universe, comic books, superhero comic books that have to be a little more commercially minded and maybe tell their stories using allegories. And there have been big events that seem to be shaped like by what the national mindset is. And I think that's really smart and kind of necessary. And it all goes back to Captain America punching Hitler on the first cover. We weren't in World War II when that happened. Captain America was. Comic books were ready to kick Hitler's ass before a lot of America was. So I've never done anything that is like analogous to something that's really happening in the news. Part of it is just that I talk about it in a more direct way in my day job. Mm-hmm. Part of it is that it's not the kind of story that I wanted to tell with this first Loki arc. I wanted to do something that was like a lot smaller and kind of more human and neighborhoody. But everything that I do read obviously affects my themes and what I'm obsessed with as a writer. So if I'm feeling bad and I need to process something, I'm sure that it comes out in ways I probably don't even realize.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you took stuff, if it's just like, I just take it to an unbelievable level, which like, just warlord wherever is doing something. What if you take this to a cosmic level or,
I haven't so far, but there's such a rich tradition of doing that. Vote Loki. Like there was a Loki story where he was literally running for president during a presidential election. That's a really good example of just synthesizing the national mood in this really like kind of direct and obvious way. And I think the audience likes that. I think it's like, here's a comic, but Lex Luthor became president for a while. Like here's a comic about what's going on in the world and how we feel about it. So I don't know. Maybe it's just because I have a job where I write explicitly about what's happening in the news that this is more of a different, maybe it's more of an escape for me.
You keep it separate.
So far I have. I mean, I think I'm an inherently political person, and I'm not going to say like I don't write political comics. I want the option of doing that in the future. But so far what I've written has sort of been more about personalities. Like, I tend to think in these very sort of, smaller human themes. Like my first Marvel project was a Lockjaw miniseries. And if you ask me what Lockjaw is about, I'd say it's about a guy who's going through a breakup and gets a dog. And if you read it, it's about, a giant inhuman dog who lives on the moon, teleporting throughout the universe, fighting a nihilist, teaming up with Spider-Ham. Like it's got all this insane stuff in it. But like at its heart, it's sort of just about D-Man is the human co-protagonist because Lockjaw doesn't talk, so it was very useful to have a sidekick. And if you step back from the action, Lockjaw is about a guy who's going through a breakup and gets a dog. And I sort of approach, Black Panther versus Deadpool and Loki. Like I've so far in the Marvel universe, I've sort of approached everything in the same way. Like Loki to me is about a guy who gets his dream job and then decides he doesn't actually want it. And how does that make him feel? Like what is the guilt and the regret associated with that? What is the sort of like, what does that make you confront about yourself when you spend all this time trying to get the thing and then you get the version of the thing and it still doesn't make you happy? So that's sort of the emotional seed that I try to have at the core of the stuff that I do, is at least like the longer form stuff that I do. But so far that seed has never been like, what happens when you no longer recognize your country? Like I've never told like a story like that of that scale. It's usually about like one or two people and the feelings that they're having. And then that is the thing that you extrapolate into like this big cosmic, teleporting dog adventure.
So not to get too political, but would you have voted for Loki?
That's a good question. Now I would have. I mean, and now that I've written Loki, I would vote for Loki. Yeah. Because I know that he is he's a smart dude. He's morally dubious, which I think all U.S. presidents have to be. I think it's kind of the nature of the job. Yeah, I'm gonna go on the record here. I would have voted for Loki.
Very good.
Oh yeah, especially since you're writing them now. So basically, you're like,
well, I'd probably be in the cabinet.
Yeah.
Probably be Secretary of Magic Scrolls or something.
But no, I get what you were saying with the Loki series. I that so came across to me. I think Loki was like before, Thor's had it easy being the good guy. Now he's just like, this is much harder than I thought it'd be being the good guy.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Like I think maybe my favorite line so far is just when he's in the park in issue 4 with Thor and Tony, and he's like, "Hey, look at us, the original Avengers," and they're like, "Yeah, nice try."
It's a big swing.
Oh yeah.
Hank Pym would have agreed.
Oh, yeah, probably. But that guy's, I mean, speaking of morally dubious.
But now he's like, went bonded to Ultron and stuff. Cause they have just, over the years, Hank Pym has been their punching bag.
Yeah, he started it.
Yeah, that's the guy they never put back in the box. No one ever really okay, let's put him back to zero.
Yeah, I love Hank Pym as a character. I would love to do stuff with Hank Pym. I think that all of the fundamental brokenness of Hank Pym, I think, is a feature and not a bug. I know that they've tried a couple times. I know like Secret Invasion had some Hank Pym reset stuff. Like Hank Pym was a Skrull for a while.
Yeah.
But I don't think they've ever really cracked it in the minds of the readers, emotionally. I don't think anybody ever got to a place where they really wanted to root for Hank Pym again, and I'm fine with that. I think that when you have an entire Marvel universe, it needs to be populated with people who are not just
perfect.
Well, not just superheroes and supervillains, not just people who are punching and getting punched. I think you need a lot of people in between who are just building spaceships and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Hank Pym has always been really, really useful as a sort of and they do a really good job with the movies, I think, as well. Like Hank Pym as a supporting character, I think is very useful.
Just can be hot, he can be too analytical, but too walled off. But I think the problem with Hank Pym is just like sometimes if someone gets a good story, they're like, let's give this to Scott Lang.
Oh, that if you were writing an Ant-Man story, that you might be inclined to give it to an Ant-Man who people like more.
Yeah.
I get it. I get why you do that.
Because they're just like,
you want people to have a good time.
Scott's the everyman, people will relate to him more. Let's just give it that,
Yeah, Ant-Man is, Hank Pym in my mind is kind of like, what if Reed Richards had nobody in his life who could make him not be Reed Richards all the time. And I think that's what happens. I think you get utterly corrupted by, the work.
Yeah. Which sort of, he's just one bandana away from being Dr. Doom, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody tried. It worked for a while.
Yeah, and now he's Ultron.
Yep. And now he's literally half an Ultron face.
Yeah. Oh goodness. Well, that got dark. Just one final question I got to ask you, and maybe this is just the way my crazy mind works. Is Kibblesmith your actual last name?
Kibblesmith is my real name. Yeah.
And,
people ask me that, but I don't know why. If it wasn't my last name, I don't know how I would get to it.
Oh, because it's
like I saw it on a truck somewhere
it's the perfect
or something.
name for a writer. It's a really writerly name. Like if I were to create a comic book about a writer, I might come up with the name Kibblesmith because I think of the phrase ishkabibble.
Okay, sure.
Which of course is words, and then Smith, the person who takes nonsense words and puts them into a design.
Oh, that's really interesting. No one's ever pitched me that before.
So
yeah, I get it. It's my real name. It's thanks. It's always available. If I need an email address or something, it's never taken. I'm the oldest of a lot of kids, so I grabbed all the domain names and email addresses before anybody else could. But yeah, I like it because, if you see, especially with comic books, you see one last name on the cover, and if it was Smith, you'd be like, oh, sweet, Kevin Smith, is back to comic book writing. He's doing, it's like, no, it's just, and then they're disappointed when it's me. So yeah, it's my real name. But I love when people ask me if it's a fake name because I never know how to explain, where would it come from? Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything.
Well, now you have a story for why.
Now I have a story of how it could have been generated. Yeah.
There we go.
And speaking of names, please feel free to use ours in a Loki issue or.
Oh sure, yeah. I have friends where there are two characters in Lockjaw who are named after a friend of mine.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that's a fun little Easter egg that once you get to write things, you get to start. It's like a free Christmas present. You should abuse it.
And by the way, let me just say, I love any story where D-Man isn't just kicked around by the Marvel Universe. So
yeah.
I really appreciated that.
That's why he needed a dog. He was somebody who needed to pet a dog. Somebody who had enough bad things happen to him that it was time to start the healing.
I can never forgive Captain America for just leaving him. I'm just saying that. It's a hard thing for me.
It's a fraught relationship, is what I will say. It's a fraught relationship. Because I know that Captain America feels bad, but he's also very busy. And I think we all have friends that we haven't seen in a while, because we are busy and life keeps happening. And, those people sort of like live at the periphery of our guilt. Yeah. That would be a fun D-Man story. That Captain America D-Man story that's just strictly about the awkwardness of their relationship.
Yeah, there we go. Make it happen, Marvel.
Yeah, I'm available. They know how to find me.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
You are a friend of the show now, Daniel Kibblesmith. So anytime you promote a comic book or a book, let me know. I can even just throw it up on our social media. So
thank you kindly. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I hope I have a bunch more Lokis, a bunch more other stuff to keep coming back and plugging. That would be great.
Anything else you want to plug while you're here?
Yeah, I mean everything. You can find me on the internet at Kibblesmith or at kibblesmith.com. I am a writer for The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, which is on CBS 11:35 Eastern Time. I guess soon that'll be Eastern Daylight Time as of this recording.
Yes.
Yeah, and I have, as you guys mentioned, a children's book coming out next year with illustrator Ashley Quach called Princess Dinosaur. I almost said the other one, our previous one, Santa's Husband, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a very cute illustrated Christmas book for kids and families and couples who maybe are looking for alternative Christmas pop culture. Might feel a little underrepresented in holiday specials.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that. I have a 6-year-old. I might have to check that out.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, it's really sweet, and and ready. It's where I live. I'm in New York, and it is already really cold. So it's the Christmas season as far as I'm concerned.
Charlie's New Jersey. I'm Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Yes, you guys get it. And then Loki is on sale now. I believe number 5 comes out on November 20th, and it is a Old West team up with young Wolverine. It is the first time Loki meets Wolverine.
Oh, nice.
Chronologically.
Yeah, chronologically. So, as I've been saying on Twitter, hashtag Loki is a cowboy now.
Yes.
Talk about the straight man, Wolverine. Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's serious, but it's young Wolverine, so he doesn't know what to make of this guy. It's really fun.
But he's still like young and idealistic. He's not all embittered yet.
He's pretty grizzled right out of the gate.
Oh, he is?
But there's a sort of like a boyish sort of. You see him figuring out who he's going to be. What it means to be. What it means to be this kind of unkillable monster and wanting to do the right thing, which I think is another thing that Loki can relate to, and one of the reasons that I think team-ups between those two characters are so compelling.
Your lethal weapon combination there.
Yeah, basically.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us on a Saturday morning here.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Again, if you want to ever promote anything, get a hold of me. We'll make it happen.
Look, I'm like Loki. I'm around. I just pop up.
And remember, you're free to use our names.
Yes, it's on the list.
Early info. Okay, and think about who Loki's mom was.
Got it. Also on the list. Yet to be revealed.
It is. Okay.
All right, so go finish your coffee, sir.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. See you then. Bye.
All right. Thank you. I love it.
I love it. It's great. I just wanted to plant a seed. Didn't give him the secret. I'll let him discover that for himself.
See if he can get to there himself.
I'd love to see if someone could. It's like I put that out there in the universe, and it's obvious when you think about all the timelines that have been established about why Odin's invading. Here's a baby suddenly. Killed the dad. What happened to the mom? Nobody mentions. I guess I'll just adopt this baby and raise him as my own. Because not for nothing. It's not like Odin didn't just do that the week before. That Gaia lady.
Gods have been up to stuff for centuries.
Well, it's different for gods, as Harry's said. Well, he has a horse baby. And Loki has a serpent baby.
That's
and
right.
a wolf baby,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. Oh, yeah, Loki's wife. We should mention her from time to time. That's got it.
Should we get out of here?
Reunion. Okay, Philip, in the meantime, if people would like to talk to you about Loki. Oh, by the way, before we go, I just want to make one shout out to Excalibur and Krakoa and,
Did you read it?
Oh, yeah, I did read it. First off, when he's sending Betsy off to Krakoa, I got this total How to Serve Man guy vibe of just walk through the doorway, it'll be paradise. And no, it's a cookbook, which you immediately. I'm sorry, how do you pronounce his A name now?
It's that mute language, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey.
Hey. Okay, Fonzie.
Exactly.
And it was like you're just having tea with Apocalypse. It's like, well, no, all mutants are welcome. It's like it's Apocalypse. It's like it's you having drinks with Hitler. We're just all welcome here. We're a welcoming society. It's like, should you be though? But I'm excited about that because we do see essentially now she's Captain Britain, but she's back on, and I'm like I don't think the mutants are doing. This is why people think mutants are a menace. That's all I'm gonna say.
It seemed odd to me because her brother Captain Britain isn't a mutant, right? Because I swear in every other book they're like only mutants can come to Krakoa, but they're like, oh yeah, to bring Captain Britain on,
Yeah, well they were gonna let him come.
Yeah,
giving a special dispensation.
I guess.
And that's literally what they said. That he normally couldn't because they let humans come onto the island as guests. So you can come to the island, you're just not welcome on the island. You just have to come to the island after an invitation, and then we will allow you to. So, yeah. Yeah. So, but like I said, I don't trust those mutants that and not for nothing, Apocalypse, totally magicking up poor Rogue. I mean, there's stuff going on here that clearly needs to be unpacked. I liked it. I liked the old Excalibur series a lot. So it was a kind of a neat take on it. Especially Captain Britain sort of being taken over by Morgan Le Fay, and we still don't know, is she the bad guy or the good guy?
Yeah.
Because she is defending Camelot. We don't know who the White Witch is. I was half expecting the White Witch to be Emma Frost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's some kind of time distortion here, but yeah. And the royal family is indisposed, and what does that mean? Yeah. So there's a lot going on there. And again, maybe a great redemption arc from Morgan Le Fay. She's not evil, she's just magic. Just like Loki. Just to tie that all into it. Although, I guess she is kind of evil because she, Well, actually, she didn't kill those acolytes. The other person did. So, although she did want to kill, Betsy. So, yeah. So, yeah, probably a little evil. Probably pretty much mostly evil. Okay. That was the last shout out I wanted to do. Philip, if people would like to talk to you about any of this stuff, how can they find you?
If you would like to talk to me, talk to us, just like TV and comic writer Daniel Kibblesmith. Email me, nightwingpdp@gmail.com. On Twitter, I am at nightwingpdp, and you can get a hold of us at the Capes and Lunatics emails, capesandlunatics@gmail.com, and the voicemail is 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES.
And of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way the way our mods and pods once did at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter as we live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and other things when they come back at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the two E's in the middle.
For quality.
Bing! Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming back to us once again to listen to our interviews and all of our talks and things. Please connect with us again next week. Good night.
And thank you, Daniel Kibblesmith, which is your real name.
Yes, it is his real name.
Although he said
cool name. I'm sorry.
He said it. You're not the first one who said that, so.
Yeah, well, because it's a cool name.
You're just like, hey, he's one of those Hollywood types of his fake names.
Well, hey, Stan Lee. His name is Lee. There's a long tradition about coming up with a new name.
That's true.
And this is going in the opposite direction that Lee did, but still.